next subtitle and last subtitle for today, we have the California Gold Rush. So we're going kind of topically here rather than by date. Gold was first discovered in California in 1848, kind of on the other side of the Mexican-American War that we'll talk about more tomorrow. This is really what begins the Great Migration West, using two main trails, the Oregon Trail and the California Trail. Now, we're pretty familiar with the Oregon Trail because of a truly lovely game that came out, ages ago. But this was very dangerous, as the game itself illustrates. Many died from disease or starvation along the way, both on the Oregon Trail and the California Trail. One good example of this is the well-known Donner Party. If you haven't heard of the Donner Party, they were a pretty large group that was heading for California and became snowbound in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And they had to resort to cannibalism to survive the winter and arrive in California. I think about half of their group survived and arrived in California. So that just illustrates how difficult it was to, in fact, get west. Mostly they had to start in Missouri and then travel across pretty much unsettled and dangerous lands to get to California or Oregon. So thousands did head for California to find gold around this time, not just Americans. Even a lot of Australians went to California in search of gold. In fact, in 1854, 500,000 immigrants came to America, and a lot of those headed out to California in search of quick wealth. Just to give you an illustration of how many that is in relation to America's total population, at the time they only had 27 million people total. Some people in Maine actually outfitted their own boat and sailed around Cape Horn in their quest to get to California. So some went cross country over the land, some sailed around and tried to get that way. Now, these were known as the 49ers. In particular, those who came in 1849. They were men who went to California to find gold. Most of these were anti-slavery, mostly because of the locations they came from, which defeated the South's goal to have California enter as a new slave state. But they were able to find a significant amount of gold, at least in those early years. There was a lot of gold visible above the ground, as well as in shallow creeks, and it could be panned, and you could run water over it to sift out the gold, or you could kind of scrape it off and gather it. So it was pretty ready and easy to find when people originally started arriving. But not everyone was able to find this easy money. Some really struck it rich, but about 30,000 people every year left California without making a single penny. But many did stick around, especially after all the easy gold was already picked up and people were focusing more on digging it out and mining for gold. Many found other work, and the newcomers needed food and supplies. And so those who really made it out in California were usually the ones who were opening businesses selling to those searching for gold. One example of that is actually Levi Jeans was founded out in California for that very purpose. Now, at this time, the groups going out west were dominated by men. Usually, husbands and sons and brothers would head west and tell their female family members to wait to be called once they had made it big and established themselves in the new territory. But as towns started to grow, more women started to arrive, and it was women who really built the towns in the West. And they were kind of the civilizing influence, taking tent cities and making them into cities of their own. So this is the real kind of Wild West that we're talking about here. But despite some of failure of many gold rushers, the world's gold supply that year was 45% from California, and it totaled to about $550 million. And so this also spurred on the economy. And as an eventual result, San Francisco grew up from a gold town to become a major city of over 200,000 people. And so people start to fully settle the West. It was kind of a free-for-all, really. So we have a few more pictures, and then that'll be the end of our slide.